Hey guys, Mr. Steve back. I've got a huge tutorial for y'all packed with all of the Blender 4.5 alpha updates I could get a hold of. In fact, while I was actually making this tutorial, I had to stop and go ahead and do this intro because I found more updates they did just today, March 15th, 2025. So they are super busy picking up all the commits and all the changes from even so years ago, because it's hard, it's a free open source software. It's always good. You guys get over there and support it, but they're really working hard on that. I'm working hard, and a big shout out to Pablo over there at the team who does Blender Today updates. I missed a few weeks of you. You weren't on, and you know what? Guys out here like myself and some others, we're picking up that slack, buddy, and we are doing these tutorials to further promote Blender and get out the information that it can do what it does, and letting people know that this software, once you get past the interface, is actually quite powerful and quite simple to navigate. So join me as we go through a slew of different things that I had to scour the web for and put together, and I'm still piecing this thing together, guys. I appreciate y'all. I'll see you in this tutorial. Long intro. Thanks for watching it. Well, Blender 4.5 Alpha is here, and by this October, we're going to have the 4.5 LTS release. And let's go over some of the new features that are out now, but will definitely be more perfected later on in Blender 4.5 LTS. And as always, be careful when you're using an alpha or a beta release, and make sure to save your work beforehand in a different Blender version. Now, right away on the splash screen, we see support Blender Development Fund at the fund.blender.org. This is important, and it's about time they started taking that just a little more serious to get that funding in for such an amazing program. Now, the first new feature is pretty interesting. This is something to do with geometry nodes. So we know that if we take a Suzanne and we go ahead and jump into edit and we hit P and separate this by loose parts, we end up with the eyeballs not attached, and we don't really want these to be separate parts sometimes. So if we come back out, I've used this as an instance and just a plane which is not joined at the moment, so you can see this a little better. What we've got is a new option. So you hit Control A and you've now got visual geometry to objects. And if you go to the object menu, go to apply, you'll see it here as well. And when you click on that, it's going to leave the it's going to leave the original, so you're having a duplicate, so you can just hide the original, which would be called plain in this instance. And now we've got a empty controlled and parented to this, and if we go ahead and pull in one of these objects with /, we'll notice that this did not separate the eyes out of it. So this is going to be something I think is very useful for you guys to decide just how useful this is. Obviously for whatever workflow you have, but now you have a way to separate individual objects that are instances without having all the loose parts banged out. Now, this next feature is something that's going to be great not only for the individual users, studios, but for developers for Blender add-ons. This is going to be pretty cool. So I got a basic distribute points on faces here, and I've got two inputs. I've got a cone and a cube. As you can see, these are instanced out. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and hit the N for the N panel, which is technically an alt name for that. It's actually a sidebar now, so we can pull up the sidebar, and underneath the group, click the plus symbol and add a panel. Now, in order for this to work properly, we're going to need a switch node, and we'll just grab one here, and I'm going to put it between the cube and the set, and I want this to be true, and then we'll just duplicate this. And this could be set to false. It doesn't really matter. You can do this either any which way you want. Now that I've got the panel, let's go ahead for the cube and let's rename this panel to cube. That way it's nice and organized. Now I want to output some of these properties. So something I can do is just Shift D this. I want to grab the size and I'll grab the X, Y, and Z. Now over here, can do is left click hold on the size and just hover over cube till it highlights. This is how you do this in Blender 4 Plus. You can grab all of these properties and throw them in, and I'm probably not getting them all perfect. There we go. So now with cube highlighted, let's go ahead and click the plus symbol and let's add our toggle. So now that we are outputting the cube toggle, we can control the switch, whether it be true or false. It doesn't matter. You can do it this way as well. So, hey, I want to turn it off. And then you can minimize that panel. Now, nested panels are not something totally new. About 3 months ago or so, we got more nested panel functionality. So, but anyways, this is one way you can do it. So let's go ahead and tag this one as well. So I can go ahead and minimize that. And I'm going to add a new panel in first. And I'll rename this one cone because that is the name of the geometry node primitive that I have here. So now I want to go ahead and output this as well. I'll just Shift D, another output property. And I'm only going to put in the fill segments, and I'm going to only put in the radius because you guys probably already get the general idea. So, but I've got fill segments here. Let's collapse cube, and I'm going to hover this over cone. I'll grab radius and hover that one over cone, and come on, fill segments, go in there. Okay, cool. So now we've got that, and now we need to, with the cube selected, hit the plus symbol and do a panel toggle. For this one, it has, this panel already has a toggle, so I'm on the wrong one, so just be careful. There we go. So now it's highlighted, and I've got a panel toggle. Go ahead and tag this one in, and now I can either show or not show the panel. Let's get that in there. It's trying to play around. So now cube is showing here, and I can turn that off. I can open that up and have all of these on or off, however I want to do it. And it looks like I grabbed the wrong one, so let's tag that in because it was controlling both, which is actually something you could do if you wanted. So now cube is active and cube is not, and I can minimize those properties, and the same with cone and the properties there. So I believe this will be a very helpful and a very powerful tool for creation in Blender. This update is a little less noticeable, but is just a quality of life improvement. So here, obviously still in 4.5 alpha, we now have a UI background that's going to stand out when you bring out a panel. So now when I drop out panels, if there are any sub panels, you may not see that, but for the actual panel in between them, you will now see a different color right here, slightly. So maybe that's just a little touch easier on the eyes. And if I go back over to Blender 3.6, and we can go ahead and drop down surface as well, and we see none of that. So that's definitely an improvement and maybe a little less of an eye strain. Now for one I have not tested out yet, I'm just excited. Every now and then I like to just not test one and just go in and check it out, so I get surprised with you guys. So this one's under geometry nodes, drag and drop options. For import nodes, we're going to go into the edit and preferences, and what we can do here is go to, I believe, system or interface. Oop, I'm locked up. What's going on? Okay, fine. It's going to be interface and developer extras. Make sure that's on, and then you can go to experimental right here. Then right here, new file import nodes. We'll have that one on. And now let's go ahead and pull up an OBJ file and drop it in. And actually, it does take STL as well. So I'm just going to drag and drop. I think people don't remember you can do this. Blender's gotten real big on drag and drop since Blender, was it 3.6.6 or something like that? But anyways, probably just 4.0 and up. So here you go. This is now in here, and we can tag this in if you're going to be importing STL. And if you can hit Shift A and hit search, type in import, and voila, you can do CSV, OBJ, PLY, and STL. And that is going to give you some new ways to drop in some of the file browser nodes, which I think is a great add. Now, a subtle but important change will be something like the timeline bar here. I don't know if you know this, but you can actually pull the bar out. This is nothing new, but the fact that when you do have this collapsed a little bit, and you have the mouse over here in this area, it will draw about 20% visibility no matter what the transparency is, and that's going to be for all scroll bars. Now if we come over here, we'll see the same action where it kind of pulls in and then goes out. It's a nice clean UI. Over in Blender 3.6, it's just a hard static bar, whether your mouse is over it or not. And you did get some kind of action like that on these scroll bars on the side, but this is another quality of life improvement. Now, on kind of a side note, I noticed this while I was going through some of these new features, that over here, cavity now shows at the bottom on viewport shading in Blender 4.5 and moving forward, whereas if we go back to just 4.3.2 and pull up viewport shading, we can see the cavity is like way up here, and it's just it's a different setup altogether. And then you've got the depth of field outline in the specular lighting. So now you've got the outlines so on here in specular lighting, and it's interesting. Yeah, no, that's fine. So back in 4.5 here, yeah, so cavities down here, I would consider this more discreet and just a little bit nicer, just a little bit better, just a little more quality in the panels, a little more cleanliness. So previously, you were not able to take a mesh parented with a bone, with a vertex group, and if you go to the item tab and you were to select the vertex or the group, then if it was locked, you would not have access to normalize. So an outside operator, now you can actually normalize these when they're locked vertex groups, which would not work previously. As you can see, for this next update, I am still in Blender 4.5 Alpha. However, in the background, I was like, hey, let me go to blender.org, let me go to the wiki notes, let me look, just to see if anything had changed. And while I'm actually making the tutorial, something changed. So I downloaded the latest March 15th, and for this exact same setup, we now have a mesh to curve node that will switch between edges and faces. And you've got a different behavior now. Even if we fill caps here, you still have this thing going on, but what it does is it turns the faces, mesh faces, into cyclical curves. So when you click this button, it attempts to turn everything into a curve, which is super cool. We like that a lot. So then you can kind of play around with the resolution. You know, there's tricks to making these corners look good. And there's also now a curve to mesh scale setting. So what in the world is going on? This is nice. And of course, you know, we've got to mess around with that just a little bit. So let's resample this curve and let's use the scale setting to pull out a noise texture. You didn't see that coming, right? I'm going to switch this to length. I'm going to drop it back to the minimum, and there we go, back to the minimum. And this will show the noise now because I've kind of minimized it. I'll put this scale to 10. It's kind of cool. We can do some of this stuff. You know, you can play around with it. Switch this to 4D, very old school stuff. Go to the W factor, press hashtag, and then type out frame/500. That should be really slow. Pull out my timeline just a little bit here and hit play. And you got this oozing effect. And now what we can do is we can increase said resolution. And then that's going to go a little slow. Let me bring that back down. I think that's fair. And what we can do is actually speed this up. Let's do 200. Look at that, super cool. Now that's not something, I mean, you could do it before, but this is definitely easier. Just like took me 2 seconds to do that. Now you're not going to have to add in a scale node, or rather a scale elements node. We did not previously have that. So Blender 4.5 is the LTS is coming at the end of this year, is going to be packed with updates, and obviously these will be more perfected in Blender 5.0, so something definitely to look forward to, something you guys can go in and play with just a bit. This is the node group, the proposal here for the mesh to curve. As you can see, these are groups, but now they're actual nodes, so you don't have the drop down here. At some point, maybe this will change and you'll get those again. But until then, this adds a mode option to the node to choose between existing behavior and the new behavior that converts each face to a cyclical curve. Generally, it's much faster than existing mode because it's easy to parallelize and because curve offsets, and face corner attributes can be implicitly shared to avoid copies. Super cool. Check that one out. Now you can go into geometry nodes, and if you put in an image texture node, you would normally get this behavior. Hey, let me plug this in. I've got to choose an image, or rather, doesn't even matter. I don't have to really choose an image. I can just export this, and you got the option to choose from different things that are already here. Okay, so now you would just do that. But in the updated version, you grab an image texture, tag this in. What you'll notice now, when I export this, is we get a file browser. And this is going to be cool because now you can open or you can do new right here in the panel in properties. So now if I want to load something, I can load it in right there. Makes things, I believe, just so much easier. Not have to go back in. And let's just say you went ahead and had this thing turned into a group. You hit Control G and then you hit Tab. And then maybe you've got a bunch more of these kind of going down the track here, and you're like, oh yeah, okay. Now instead of doing that, you can just go ahead and upload a new image. I think this is going to be huge and make things a lot easier. So that's a great update. You guys, just a quick little interlude here. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I've got well over 6,000 subscribers now, where the number is not as important as actually helping people. It is cool to see this channel grow over the last few years. It's been a long journey. So I wanted to share with you guys, I'm going to do 25% off of all of my Blender Market add-ons that I have come up with myself and my collab partner, Sam. Now, things like render switch, which will stop your crashes during render, and it's going to actually save before the render, and it's going to just work quietly in the background. It's a really cool add-on, super low profile. Then I've got things like Ref Pro. You can do some professional reference imaging setups. You've got a 2D and a 3D. I've got an image generator that takes an image and puts it into an AI API and will automatically pop out a 3D model. Right now, the AI stuff is just a little bit lacking, but you can still use these models in your scene. Just put them a little further away from the camera for now. Then I've got things like the OCP one-click proxy add-on, going to speed up your viewport, huge when you're doing scenes. It'll add a proxy instance by face count. Then I got bevel joints, which is my flagship add-on. Everybody seems to love that one. You can just seamlessly join mesh objects, make them perfectly manifold, and then add bevels. And if you're using Blender 4.3 and up, guess what? You've got edge attribute bevels in as many as you want, because I built some special code into the add-on, and then you can press, I think it's Shift F or Control F, and you can pull up a whole list of all of the different bevels you have and then adjust them. Super cool. Thanks for watching. There's still more to come. Stay tuned. Now let's take a quick look at a few things. I'm just going to cherry pick out of the Blender 4.4 candidate. We have a release candidate now. It's not in LTS. The Blender 4.5 LTS Alpha notes and things like that. That's the basic stuff we've been going over because that's coming soon. Now, I'm just going to skip on down. We do have some new GPU rendering support. I'll put a link in the comments. You guys can check it out. As always, the optics denoiser for NVIDIA. So this has been updated to improve denoising quality. Here's the old stuff. There's the new stuff. Old, new, old, new, old, and the new. I love it. So now you can get a much better idea of what things are actually going to look like, maybe so in a final render. And of course, you have to always go through geometry nodes. Now there's a few notable things like the limit surface option, which is going to be a new setting on the subsurf node. Okay, this is going to be better for smoothing the top, smooth as possible, in other words. So when you click on that, it's going to be better performance. And don't forget, you go backwards with something like this, and you have all the other stuff tied in, compatibility issues going backwards, and then of course forwards with older versions. Now you've got collection and object nodes now. If you want to kind of stack these in, these are also an option. And there's another node that is really cool. This is an error or warning message. And this looks a lot like when I do an operator in Serpent's visual scripting, right? And then I say, hey, if something is true, and maybe I'll just pull up something real quick. Let's pull up, say, let's go to context actually. And let's go all the way down and we'll say if, yeah, there we go. So if the Blender file itself is saved, then it's true. Then we would want to maybe open a panel, okay? And that panel would let you do something else. But if it's false, then I would want to report an error, okay? And then I would say, hey, warning, whoops, warning, the file is not saved. Okay, and then I would open up some kind of a sub panel. We can just do this real quick. It's kind of cool. So I'll just drop in the interface panel, and I've got some tutorials on this if you want to make add-ons like this. I do it through visual scripting, regular scripting, and all kinds of stuff. So collaborative efforts. Yep. So we'll do this as shortcut only, and this panel will just produce a button that says file is saved. And in fact, I don't even have to do that. I don't need a button because I don't need any functionality for this. So let's just tag in a label that reads that, and then I'll do an on key press or a key map. We can just use Y. Suppose that should work. Maybe I don't have anything else installed that's using it. And when I press Y, if this file is not saved, which it isn't, I'm going to get a warning down here at the bottom of the screen. So if I press Y, and I think I'm going to have to switch that maybe to Delta. Okay, that's a good reason I didn't customize this and set the operator into that. So let me recompile that. D, yep, warning, the file is not saved. Then you could do a warn, right? And we have a warning as well. And I'm not going to represent this because I've never used this one before. Obviously, pretty new. And I press D, you get a warning for file not saved. Then if I want to do error, like what this would be. Oh wait, I was doing, okay, so info is the top one, it's the blue one that you saw. The first one's the soft warning. Then warning is a little bit nicer. And then if you press D, boom, you get an error. So now you've got a customizable error, and you can put the message in. It's exactly the same. Super cool. And I didn't have the panel connected, so actually now this is the render switch add-on, which you guys really should pick up. Render switch saves crashes. Okay, super cool add-on, and this is fun, guys. I really appreciate everybody who is sticking it out and going through the whole tutorial, because you'll learn something. And we'll just drop this in here. Boom, we've got a save, and boom, now that error message went away. I've got a file saved. Now this should pop up and say file saved. When I press D, file is saved. That's my label. That's all we got. Maybe I want to put this in a box format. Now it's cute, right? Okay, great. So I could alert that. Boom, file saved. Okay, so that's programming in visual scripting. Very cool stuff. I've made entire add-ons with that. Usually I do have to write some Python script out to do some more complex tasks with bmesh, but I'm getting kind of good with doing the bmesh operators in here too. So there you go. That's some of your new nodes. And these are node editor warning nodes, and dynamic labels depending on selected type, blah, 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 error, warning, info. This is the soft one. This is like, hey, wake up, you got a problem, error. Nothing's going to happen now. And Blender has tons of these. But that's kind of it, guys. Appreciate you watching. Smash that subscribe, smash that like, jump on in. I'll put my Discord link in if anybody wants to jump in. It's not like a shopping mall with people in and out every day, but there's some good notes in there, some good conversations, things you can learn from and glean. You can ask me questions about add-ons and stuff like that. I do create add-ons. I custom make add-ons for people. And yeah, there you go. Appreciate you watching, guys. See you in the next one.